My name is Chloe. I'm 33, and I'm my father Arthur's youngest child. For the last 5 years, my life has been on hold. I walked away from a career I loved and a life I was building, all to come home and look after my dad after we lost my mom. Today is his 75th birthday, and I poured my soul into making it perfect. Then, during the toast, my brother Ethan got to his feet, a smug look on his face. "Start packing, Chloe. The house is being sold." A round of applause went through the room as my entire world collapsed. My father just looked lost. I quietly slipped out the back door and made a single phone call. If you're watching this, I'd love to know where you're from in the comments. And if you could hit that like button and subscribe, you can follow along with this insane family saga. Our family has always been a complicated web, but I never thought it would unravel like this. My father, Arthur, now 75, was the rock we all anchored to. He spent his life as a brilliant architect, his designs shaping skylines and communities for over 4 decades. My mom was his high school sweetheart, the absolute center of his universe. When a sudden aneurysm took her from us 6 years ago, a fundamental part of him shattered. I was 28 back then, rapidly advancing as a project manager at a booming software firm in Denver. I had a chic loft apartment with a view of the Rockies, and my days were a blur of strategy sessions, downtown happy hours, and a promising future with Mark, a senior developer at my company. That life ended with a call from my older brother, Ethan. "Dad's not doing well," he'd said, his voice clipped and businesslike. "He's forgetting to take his meds, he's not really eating, and the house is a wreck. Someone needs to be there." Ethan, my oldest sibling at 42, is the picture of success, at least on paper. He's a managing partner at a private equity firm, lives in a sprawling suburban mansion with his wife Jessica and their 2 perfectly manicured kids. He has a new Porsche every other year, vacations in the Swiss Alps, and never, ever misses a chance to drop a mention of his latest 7-figure deal. But visiting his own father more than a couple of times a year? Apparently, that was too much for his busy schedule. My sister Megan is 40. She lives in Oregon with her husband Dave and their 3 children. She's an art teacher at an elite private school and has always, for as long as I can remember, fallen in line with whatever Ethan says. Like him, she hardly ever came home, and her calls to Dad were monthly check-ins that lasted 5 minutes, tops. Their excuse was always identical. They were swamped with their own families, their own demanding lives. I was the only one without a mortgage and kids, so the responsibility by default became mine. I requested a leave of absence, thinking it would be temporary. I packed a single suitcase and moved back into the pale yellow bedroom of my youth. What I thought would be a 3-month stint to get Dad back on his feet became my permanent reality. I saw that he needed more than just a weekly check-in. His grief had hollowed him out, and the sharp mind that once designed intricate buildings was now showing small, worrying cracks. Nothing catastrophic, just moments of disorientation and memory lapses that sent a chill down my spine. So, I made the call. I resigned from my job. I ended things with Mark, who loved me but couldn't see a future for himself outside of Denver. I committed myself fully to being Dad's caregiver. The family home, a beautiful craftsman bungalow that my mother had inherited and that my father had lovingly restored and expanded, became my world to manage. Every corner held a ghost of a memory. The kitchen where Mom taught me to make her famous sourdough, the backyard where Dad built a sprawling multi-level treehouse, the living room with the stone fireplace where we'd spent every Christmas morning. 2 years ago, Dad met Brenda at a local community garden event. She was a 52-year-old nurse, divorced, with no children of her own. Their romance was a whirlwind. To everyone's shock, they were married within 6 months. I tried to be optimistic. I truly hoped she would bring some light back into Dad's life. At first, Brenda was everything you could hope for. She was attentive, cooked Dad's favorite meals, went with him to his medical appointments, and even got him to join a local seniors book club. But there was always something just beneath the surface that made me uneasy. The way her eyes would linger a little too long on the expensive art my mother had collected. The way she'd casually ask about the property value in the neighborhood. The subtle backhanded comments about my extended vacation from real life. Ethan and Megan, of course, welcomed her with open arms. For them, she was the perfect out, a way to absolve themselves of any lingering guilt. "See, Dad's great now," Ethan said during one of his fleeting visits. "He's got Brenda. You can finally get back to your own life, Chloe." But I couldn't leave. Dad still had his good days and his bad days. His arthritis was getting worse, making the stairs a daily challenge. His blood pressure needed constant monitoring, and the bouts of confusion still came, especially in the evenings. Meanwhile, my relationship with my siblings continued to fray. From their distant perches, they became armchair experts on Dad's care. They'd question his medications, his doctors, even the organic groceries I bought. But their actual involvement was zero. No offers to help, just a steady stream of criticism. "You're letting your potential wither away," Ethan would declare. "Hiding from the world playing nursemaid isn't a life." Megan would echo him, "It's not healthy, Chloe. Dad wouldn't want you to put your entire life on hold like this." They never offered a real solution, though. No suggestion of a rotating care schedule, no offer to help pay for in-home assistance. It was always easier to judge than to participate. My only true ally was Uncle Robert, Dad's younger brother. He lived a few hours away, but visited whenever his health allowed, and he never missed his twice-weekly calls to Dad. Robert understood the choice I'd made and wasn't afraid to defend it. "Your sister made a sacrifice that neither of you was willing to make," he told Ethan and Megan during one particularly nasty holiday phone call. "You should be on your knees thanking her, not judging her." That comment went over like a lead balloon, of course, and the chasm between us grew even wider. As for Brenda, once the honeymoon period with Dad was over, her attitude towards me soured completely. She started to frame my presence as an intrusion on her marriage. "It must be so sad to be your age," she'd say when Dad was out of earshot. "With no career, no prospects, still living with your father. Or Arthur and I would have so much more privacy if you just found your own little apartment." I did my best to keep the peace for Dad's sake, but it was a constant struggle. I noticed how her behavior would shift, a mask of devotion locking into place whenever Ethan or Megan were around, only to slip the moment we were alone. Still, I stayed. This house wasn't just wood and nails to me. It was Mom's legacy, a physical manifestation of our family's entire history. And through it all, I knew Dad needed me. Those rare moments of complete clarity when he'd grip my hand and whisper, "I don't know what I would do without you, my girl," made every sacrifice feel worthwhile. I had no idea that just beneath the floorboards of our family life, a conspiracy was taking shape, a plot designed to strip away not just my home, but my father's dignity and security along with it. I spent 2 solid weeks orchestrating Dad's 75th birthday party. It was a major milestone, and I wanted it to be a beacon of joy, something to remind him of the good times. I was determined to make it flawless. The menu was a tribute to his favorite things. His absolute favorite dish was a slow-braised lamb shank, a complex recipe my mother had perfected. I did 3 trial runs, wrestling with the sauce until it was just right. Her apple pie was another hurdle. The recipe card was handwritten, The ink faded and splattered from decades of use. "The secret's in the crust, Chloe," she used to say, and I could almost hear her voice as I worked the cold butter into the flour, desperate to get it perfect in her memory. The decorations were a project of their own. I spent an afternoon in the dusty attic, sifting through boxes of old photos. I carefully selected images from every chapter of Dad's life. His graduation from architecture school, his wedding day with Mom glowing in her simple lace dress, the births of Ethan, Megan, and me, blurry snapshots from camping trips and beach vacations. I organized them all into a beautiful, leather-bound album, writing captions and dates under each one. For the party itself, I created a wall of life in the living room, a visual timeline tracing 75 years. Inviting Ethan and Megan was the hardest part. My relationship with them had hit a new low. Ethan rarely even bothered to return my calls, and Megan's communication had been reduced to curt, one-line texts. Still, I reached out, stressing how much this day would mean to Dad. "It's his 75th, Ethan," I said, my voice pleading more than I wanted it to. "It would mean the world to him if you were all here." "We'll see if we can move some things around," he replied, his tone making it sound like a colossal inconvenience. Then he added, "By the way, has Dad updated his will since he married Brenda? We really need to have a serious talk about his assets soon." The conversation with Megan was just as cold, her main concern being whether Ethan was coming and if that whole house situation would be discussed. Their reactions were like a knot in my stomach, but I tried to push it down. This day was for Dad. Brenda's behavior was just as unsettling. She insisted on inviting a handful of her own friends, people Dad had met maybe once or twice, including a man she vaguely referred to as a business associate. When I suggested we keep it intimate, just family and Dad's close friends, she accused me of trying to control her. "This is my house too now, Chloe," she snapped. "And Arthur is my husband. I get a say in who celebrates with us." Then there were the secret meetings. In the month leading up to the party, Ethan came over twice while Dad was at his physical therapy appointments. He and Brenda would sit at the kitchen table, their heads bowed together, speaking in low murmurs over a spread of papers they'd snatch up the second I walked into the room. "Just going over some new insurance options for your father," Brenda explained with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Ethan has some great connections, but I caught a glimpse of what looked like real estate brochures and property appraisal documents before they were hidden away. Something was definitely going on behind my back. I voiced my fears to Uncle Robert during one of our calls. He'd been diagnosed with prostate cancer earlier in the year and was in the middle of a grueling treatment schedule, which meant he likely couldn't make the party. That news was a blow to both Dad and me. Robert was always the heart of our gatherings, the one who could diffuse any tension with a well-timed joke. "Keep your guard up, Chloe," Robert warned when I told him about the hushed meetings. "I don't trust that woman, and Ethan's always had dollar signs for eyes. Remember what your mother always wanted for that house." Mom had been adamant. The house was her inheritance from her parents, and she wanted it to remain a sanctuary for the family, preferably with whoever ended up caring for Dad. Her will stated as much, giving Dad a life estate with the understanding that the property would eventually pass to us, her children. "I've been thinking about taking some precautions," I admitted to Robert. "Legal ones." "That's my girl. Smart move," he said. "Let me make a few calls. I still know some people from my old law firm." Robert's support was a lifeline, but I still spent nights staring at the ceiling, a sense of dread coiling in my gut. The week before the party, I walked in on Brenda in the bathroom, fiddling with Dad's pill organizer. She claimed she was just helping him sort his medications, but he seemed more confused and tired than ever that week. When I insisted on taking him for a checkup, Brenda blocked it. He's just having an off week, Chloe. You're being paranoid. I also found out she'd been showing the house to strangers. Our neighbors, Bill and Helen, mentioned seeing people walking the property and taking measurements while Dad and I were at an appointment. When I confronted her, Brenda had a slick excuse ready. They're just friends of mine, thinking about remodeling their own home. They wanted some ideas. Despite it all, I pressed on, determined to give Dad this one perfect day. The day before the party, I finished his surprise gift. I'd been planning it for months. 2 first-class tickets to Aspen, to the very same lodge where my parents had gotten engaged 46 years ago. Dad still talked about that trip, about the sunrise over the mountains when he asked Mom to marry him. I wanted to give him a chance to walk through those memories again, with me by his side to make sure he was safe and comfortable. As I wrapped the tickets in silver paper, I couldn't shake the feeling that tomorrow would be more than just a celebration. A storm was gathering, and I needed to be ready for the moment it broke. The morning of the party dawned bright and clear, with that crisp autumn sunlight that makes everything look like gold. I was up before sunrise, arranging flowers, icing the cake, and setting out the good china. Dad came downstairs around 9 a.m., looking dapper in the new cashmere sweater I'd bought him. "You look sharp, Dad," I said, fixing his collar. "Sleep well?" "Like a stone," he replied, a genuine smile briefly chasing the weariness from his eyes. Brenda gave me one of her special herbal teas to help me rest, said I needed to be fresh for my big day. A small alarm bell went off in my head, but I silenced it. Today was for Dad. Brenda appeared a few minutes later, poured into a tight, flashy red dress I'd never seen. She fussed over Dad, combing a stray hair into place, acting the part of the doting wife. But her eyes were electric with an excitement that seemed far too intense for a simple family party. "I invited a few extra people. Hope you don't mind," she announced breezily as I finished setting the table. Before I could even ask who, the doorbell rang. Ethan and Jessica were first, arriving without their kids, even though I'd specifically invited them. Dad loved his grandkids and saw them so rarely. The kids had soccer tournaments, Ethan said with a dismissive wave when Dad asked after them. He handed Dad a small, generic-looking gift bag. Megan and Dave arrived next, also child-free. Megan gave Dad a perfunctory hug before immediately joining Ethan in a corner of the living room, their heads bent in a hushed, urgent conversation. Dad's oldest friends, Bill and Helen from across the street, brought a sense of normalcy. They arrived with a loaf of homemade sourdough and warm smiles. They'd watched us kids grow up and genuinely adored my father. Their presence was a small comfort against the rising tide of strangeness. The most unnerving arrival was a man in a sharp suit, whom Brenda introduced as Gary, a dear friend. He was carrying a leather briefcase and had the polished, predatory look of a shark. When I asked how he and Brenda knew each other, his answer was vague. We move in the same professional circles. The party crawled forward on a thin veneer of civility. We ate at the big dining table with Dad at the head where he always sat. He was in good spirits, but the confusion was more pronounced. He called Helen by my mother's name twice, a mistake he'd never made before. After the lamb shanks and before the cake, I brought out the photo album. Dad's eyes lit up as he turned the pages, the memories washing over him. "Look, there we are in Yosemite," he exclaimed, pointing to a faded photo from 30 years prior. "Your mother was so scared of the bears. Remember that, kids?" Ethan and Megan barely looked up, exchanging a look I couldn't decipher. Brenda kept glancing at her watch. When it was time for the cake, I brought out my multi-layered masterpiece. We lit the candles, we sang the song, and for one fleeting moment, everything felt right. Then Ethan stood up, clinking his fork against his champagne flute. The room quieted. "I'd like to propose a toast," he began, his voice slick with a triumph I didn't understand. "To the man of the hour. Dad, you've given us so much over the years, and today we want to give something back to you, a fresh start." He paused, his gaze meeting mine with a flicker of cold, cruel satisfaction. "As some of you know, this house has become a burden. The upkeep, the stairs, the taxes. It's just too much. Brenda has been deeply concerned for his safety here. So, after a lot of careful consideration, we've made a decision for him." My stomach turned to ice as Ethan reached into his suit jacket and pulled out a folded document. "Dad has signed over power of attorney to me, and we've decided it's time to sell this house and move him into a wonderful facility, The Willows, a premium assisted living community with 24/7 medical staff." He turned to me then, his smile a venomous slash across his face. "So, start packing, Chloe. The house is being sold." The room didn't fall silent. It erupted. Glasses were raised. People cheered. Brenda was beaming, her hand clamped on Dad's arm. Megan was nodding, a look of grim approval on her face. Gary, the dear friend, opened his briefcase, revealing stacks of real estate contracts. I looked at Dad, expecting him to be furious, to fight back, but all I saw was a deep, heartbreaking bewilderment. "But what about our trip?" he asked, his voice thin and reedy. "To Aspen?" Chloe said we were going to see the sunrise. Ethan let out a short, condescending laugh. "Oh, Dad, you're not well enough to travel. Chloe's been filling your head with fantasies. The Willows has beautiful views, and you'll be safe there." "We're doing this for you, darling," Brenda cooed, her voice like poisoned syrup. "And Chloe can visit you whenever she likes. It's for the best." The betrayal was a physical shock, like a punch to the chest that knocked all the air out. They had planned this. They had used his birthday, this celebration of his life, as a stage for their coup. And everyone was acting like it was a gift. Bill and Helen looked mortified, exchanging worried glances. They knew what this house meant to Dad, to our family. "The market's on fire right now," Gary was saying, spreading papers over the table where the birthday cake sat, forgotten. "We can list next week. We'll have offers in days." I couldn't breathe. My vision was blurring. Without saying a word, I turned, walked out the back door, and stood on the porch. The cool autumn air a shock against my hot skin. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone and made the one call I had prayed I would never have to make. "Leo," I said, my voice trembling. "It's happening, just like we thought. I need you here." Now Leo had been my best friend since we met in a business ethics class in college. The irony was not lost on me. While I went into the tech world, he became a lawyer, specializing in elder law and estate litigation. When my suspicions about Brenda first started to solidify, Leo was the first person I called. "They can't just do this, Chloe," he said now, his voice a calm, steady anchor in the storm. "Not if we did our homework. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Uncle Robert is already on his way with Dr. Chen." I leaned against the porch railing, forcing myself to breathe. This horrible moment wasn't a total surprise. In fact, I'd been preparing for it for 6 months. It started with small, insidious things. Brenda misplacing Dad's glasses right before he had to sign important papers. Dad becoming incredibly drowsy after Brenda made him her special calming tea in the evenings. His confusion worsening, then miraculously clearing up for a few days when she went to visit her sister. The breaking point came late one night. I came downstairs for water and found Brenda in the dim light of the kitchen, carefully transferring pills from one prescription bottle to another. The moment she saw me, she swept them all into a drawer, claiming she was just organizing. The next day, I took one of the pills from the bottle she'd been filling to a pharmacist friend. He confirmed it was a powerful sedative, something that was absolutely not on any of Dad's prescription lists. That's when I knew. She was drugging my father, keeping him in a state of manufactured confusion to make him more pliable. At the same time, I started noticing Ethan's visits coincided perfectly with Dad's naps or appointments. I'd hear their hushed whispers from the kitchen. Once, I caught a few key phrases: power of attorney, property valuation, split the proceeds. The most damning evidence came from Dad's own phone. While helping him with an update, I stumbled on a hidden message folder. In it was a text thread between Brenda and Ethan that dated back 3 years, long before she'd met Dad. One of Ethan's messages read, "Found a perfect mark. Widower, architect, prime real estate. Daughter is a potential snag. Lives with him." Brenda's reply, "The daughter can be handled. Just get me in the door. I'll take care of the rest." They had targeted him. Her appearance at the community garden wasn't a chance encounter. It was a setup orchestrated by my own brother. When I tried to show the messages to Dad during a rare moment of lucidity, he was horrified but couldn't fully accept it. "Brenda loves me," he insisted, his voice cracking. "Ethan is my son." His denial was crushing but understandable, and by then, Brenda's chemical fog was so thick that his clear days were few and far between. That's when I called Uncle Robert. Despite his own health battles, he sprang into action, connecting me with Leo and helping me form a defensive strategy. "Your mother would haunt me if I let them steal that house from your father," Robert had vowed, "or if I let them do this to you after everything you've given up." Quietly, we made our move. We arranged for Dad to have a full cognitive assessment with Dr. Chen, a respected geriatric specialist outside of Brenda's network, during a weekend she was away. The results were clear. Dad had mild cognitive impairment, but he was fully competent when not being drugged. Armed with that report, Leo drafted a new set of legal documents. Dad signed a healthcare proxy, naming Uncle Robert and me as his sole decision-makers. He executed a new limited power of attorney that required both our signatures for any major transaction, and most crucially, he signed a declaration of intent, a legally binding document stating his explicit desire to live out his days in the family home with in-home care as needed. We had it all witnessed and notarized on a day Brenda was supposedly at a nursing seminar, which I later discovered never took place. Leo kept the originals locked in his office safe. We also installed discreet, legally permissible cameras in the main living areas. The footage was devastating, capturing Brenda tampering with his pill organizer and even berating him for misplacing his wallet. I had been gathering this arsenal, planning to confront them with Robert's help once his cancer treatments were done. But Ethan's birthday ambush had forced my hand. As I hung up with Leo, I squared my shoulders. Through the window, I could see Ethan handing out pens, pointing to signature lines on Gary's documents. Brenda was practically vibrating with excitement. Dad just sat there, slumped in his chair, looking smaller and older than I had ever seen him. My anger was a cold, sharp blade. This was about more than a house. This was about my father's right to live with dignity. It was about honoring my mother's memory. It was about justice. The crunch of tires in the driveway announced Leo's arrival. A moment later, another car pulled in. Uncle Robert got out looking tired from his treatments, but with a fire in his eyes. Dr. Chen was with him, carrying his medical bag. "Ready?" Robert asked, placing a firm hand on my shoulder. I nodded, my spine turning to steel. "More than ready. Let's go end this." Together, the three of us walked back into the house, into the lion's den, ready to burn it all down with the truth. The party chatter died the instant we walked through the door. Ethan was in the middle of explaining something about escrow when he saw us. Gary, the real estate agent, froze with a glossy brochure in his hand. Brenda, who had been perched on the arm of Dad's chair, stood up straight, her expression hardening. "Chloe," Ethan said with an exaggerated sigh, "we're handling important business here. Why don't you go make some coffee while the adults finish up?" "The business stops now," I said, my voice ringing with a clarity that surprised even me. "Dad is not selling this house, and he is not going anywhere." Ethan laughed, a short, ugly sound. "It's a little late for that, little sister. The power of attorney is signed. I have the legal right to make these decisions for Dad's own good." "I want everyone to listen very carefully," I announced, my voice carrying across the silent room. "What is happening here isn't just a family disagreement. It's a crime." Megan frowned. "What are you talking about, Chloe?" "Ethan has power of attorney. This is all legal, is it?" I shot back. "Has anyone here wondered why Dad's health declined so rapidly and so conveniently right after Brenda came into his life?" Brenda let out a theatrical gasp. "How dare you? I have done nothing but love and care for Arthur. Tell them, darling." She nudged Dad, who just blinked, looking from her to me, utterly lost. "Brenda has been systematically drugging my father," I continued, my voice gaining strength. "She has been giving him unprescribed sedatives to create artificial symptoms of dementia." "That's a lunatic accusation," Ethan scoffed. "You're just bitter because your free ride is over. Time to face the real world, Chloe." Leo stepped forward. "My name is Leo Vance. I'm Ms. Hayes' legal counsel," he said calmly, "and we have substantial evidence of medication tampering, including video footage from the last 4 months and a full pharmacy audit. Mrs. Walker has been substituting Arthur's prescribed heart medication with powerful sedatives." Brenda's face went white, but she held her ground. "These are lies. Arthur, tell them how I take care of you." Dad looked between us, his brow furrowed in pain and confusion. I don't know what's going on." "Because you've been drugged, Dad," I said softly. "Remember that weekend last month when Brenda was gone? Remember how clear you felt? That's because you were on your correct medication." Megan was starting to look sick. "Ethan, is this true? Did you know about this?" Before Ethan could spin another lie, Uncle Robert spoke, his voice raspy but strong. "There's more. Brenda and Ethan have known each other for over 3 years. This was a setup from the beginning, targeting Arthur for his property." "That's insane," Ethan sputtered. "She met him at a community garden event. It was random." I pulled out my phone and brought up the text messages. "Is this random, Ethan? A thread between you and Brenda from 3 years ago? Where you talk about finding A-Mark with Prime Real Estate? Where you discuss how to handle me? Is this random?" Megan snatched the phone from my hand. Her face crumpled as she read. "Oh my God, Ethan. Tell me this isn't real." Dr. Chen then stepped forward and addressed my father directly. "Mr. Hayes, I am Dr. Chen. We met for an assessment last month. With your permission, I would like to take a blood sample now to test for any unprescribed substances in your system." Dad nodded slowly, the fog in his eyes beginning to recede as the pieces clicked into place. "Yes, please." "Do it." Brenda lunged forward. "This is an invasion of his privacy. As his wife, I do not consent." "Fortunately, Brenda, your consent is irrelevant," Leo interjected smoothly. "Mr. Hayes executed a new, binding healthcare proxy last month, giving full decision-making authority to his brother Robert and his daughter Chloe." He produced a copy of the document, handing one to Ethan and Megan. As you can see, this document, which was signed when Mr. Hayes was demonstrably of sound mind, supersedes any previous power of attorney, especially in matters of health. Gary, the agent, was frantically stuffing papers back into his briefcase. I was led to believe this was a unanimous family decision. With legal disputes of this nature, I must withdraw my services. Ethan slammed his hand on the table. This is a joke. Dad signed the POA to me 3 weeks ago. That's the most recent document, and it takes precedence. Actually, Leo countered, a power of attorney signed under the influence of mind-altering substances is invalid on its face. Furthermore, the healthcare proxy Harold signed explicitly revokes all prior powers of attorney. We have a mountain of evidence, Ethan, starting with the fact that Dr. Reynolds, the doctor who diagnosed Dad's rapid decline, is a former colleague of Brenda's. Megan had backed away from Ethan, her face a mask of horror. You told me Dad was getting worse. You said the move was his idea. Your brother has been lying to all of you, Robert said gently. Arthur never, ever wanted to leave this house. It was Barbara's home, and her wish was for him to be cared for here until his last day. Dr. Chen finished drawing the blood. I'll have these results rushed, but based on my prior examination, I have no doubt what we'll find. Dad was watching, his eyes growing clearer and sharper by the second. I remember signing papers for Ethan. I was so fuzzy that day. Brenda had just made me her tea. He turned to her, the hurt in his eyes hardening into a cold fury. Have you been giving me things, Brenda? Making me sick? She didn't answer him. She turned to Ethan, her voice a panicked hiss. Do something. They're twisting everything. Leo addressed the room again. The power of attorney Ethan is holding will not stand up in court. We have video of Brenda administering an unprescribed substance to her husband approximately 1 hour before that document was signed. You were spying on us, Brenda shrieked. Installing security cameras in one's own home is perfectly legal, Leo replied, especially when elder abuse is suspected. The dam finally broke. This is all Chloe's fault, Brenda screamed, pointing a trembling finger at me. She's been jealous of me since day one. She's the one who's been manipulating him. Ethan tried to regain control. These are serious defamatory statements. If you persist, we will have no choice but to sue. Please do, Leo said with a thin smile. I'm sure a judge would be very interested in our evidence. And also in the $45,000 that have been transferred from Arthur's retirement account into your personal account over the last year, Ethan. Megan gasped. $45,000? Dad, did you know about this? Dad shook his head. Number Brenda handled the online banking. She told me it was too complicated for me to understand anymore. Megan rounded on Ethan, her disgust palpable. You told me he was losing money forgetting to pay bills. Was that a lie, too? It was for financial management services, Ethan stammered. Billed through your own firm at 5 times the industry rate, Leo added. Another fact that Adult Protective Services will find fascinating. Gary, the agent, was at the door. I'm leaving. Now he fled, leaving his glossy brochures scattered like dead leaves. Brenda's tactics shifted. She turned to Dad, her face a caricature of wounded love. Arthur, my love, don't listen to them. They're trying to drive a wedge between us. You know I love you. Dad looked at her, and for the first time in 2 years, he truly saw her. If you loved me, you wouldn't have drugged me. You wouldn't have conspired with my son to steal my home from me. This is my house too, she cried. Actually, Robert said, stepping forward, the prenuptial agreement you signed specifically relinquishes any and all claims to this property in the event of a divorce. And given the circumstances, I think we have grounds for a swift annulment based on fraud. Brenda whirled on Ethan. You told me the prenup was just a formality. You said once the house was sold, it wouldn't matter. Ethan took a step back from her. I never said that. You're delusional. Megan was now at Dad's side, her arm around his shoulders. I'm so sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry. I should have come to see for myself. You were busy, Dad said, patting her hand, and your brother has always been very convincing. Seeing her allies gone, Brenda made one last, desperate confession. Fine. You want the truth? Yes. I married him for the house. Ethan approached me with the whole plan. I play the loving wife. He handles the legal stuff, and we split the profits. Are you happy now? She stormed past us and up the stairs. I'm getting my things. This marriage was a sham anyway. We stood in silence as the sound of drawers being slammed open echoed through the house. Ethan was alone now, exposed and abandoned. This is all blown way out of proportion, he mumbled. I was just trying to ensure Dad's future. By drugging him and stealing from him, I asked, my voice dripping with contempt. Get out, Dad said, his voice stronger than I'd heard it in years. Get out of my house, Ethan. I don't want to see your face. Fine, Ethan sneered, grabbing his jacket. But this isn't over. That POA is still valid. We'll see about that, Leo said. In the meantime, an emergency protective order has been filed, freezing any transactions on your father's assets. You'll be served tomorrow. Ethan stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Megan was sobbing. Dad, Chloe, I'm so sorry. He played you too, Megan, I said, surprised that I felt more pity than anger towards her. What matters is that you're here now. Brenda came clomping down the stairs with 2 suitcases. My lawyer will be in touch about the settlement. I believe fraud, elder abuse, and pending criminal charges will significantly impact any settlement, Leo noted. The DA takes medication tampering and financial exploitation of the elderly very seriously, especially with Dr. Chen's blood test as evidence. Brenda froze, her face ashen. Without another word, she dragged her suitcases out the door and into the night. In the quiet that followed, Dad looked around the room at the people who were left. Me, Megan, Robert, Leo, Dr. Chen, and his dear friends Bill and Helen, his real family. I believe, he said, a weak smile touching his lips. There is still some birthday cake that needs to be eaten. And as Martha went to the kitchen and George poured drinks, our broken party reassembled into something new, a celebration of truth. Dad hugged me tight. Thank you for watching out for me, Chloe. Thank you for not giving up. Always, Dad, I promised, feeling the crushing weight of the past year finally start to lift. Always. 3 months have passed since the birthday party that almost destroyed us. The world outside is covered in a quiet blanket of snow, and inside our home, a sense of peace has finally returned. Dad's recovery has been remarkable. Once he was off Brenda's cocktail of sedatives, the man I knew and loved reemerged. His mind is sharp, his wit is back, and while he still has the aches and pains of a 75-year-old, the fog of dementia she created has completely vanished. We've fallen into a comfortable routine of morning walks, afternoon chess games, and evenings spent listening to his old jazz records. The legal fallout was swift. Brenda's blood tests came back positive for a cocktail of unprescribed drugs. Faced with the video evidence and a mountain of charges, she took a plea deal. Probation, a hefty fine, and a permanent restraining order. She left town without a fight. Good riddance. Ethan's fate has been more painful. The financial investigation uncovered his scheme, and he is facing felony charges for financial elder abuse. He's likely to lose his professional licenses and could even face jail time. But worse than that, he has been completely cut off. He refuses all contact, blaming me for ruining the family instead of taking any responsibility. Megan, however, has been a revelation. The shock of Ethan's betrayal was a harsh wake-up call. She and her family now visit at least once a month, filling the house with the chaos and laughter of her children, which Dad adores. We are slowly, carefully rebuilding our sisterhood. As for me, I found a new kind of balance. With Dad's health stable, I hired a wonderful part-time caregiver, Maria, who comes in a few days a week. This freed me up to take a remote project management role with a nonprofit, allowing me to use my skills again while still being here for Dad. It's not the fast-track corporate life I once had, but it's a life filled with purpose and peace. Uncle Robert has been our anchor. After his cancer treatments proved successful, he sold his house and bought a smaller place just down the street. He's over for dinner most nights, and his presence has been a profound source of comfort and healing for Dad. We finally took that trip to Aspen last month. We stood on the same hotel balcony where he had proposed to Mom all those years ago and watched the sun paint the snow-covered peaks in shades of pink and gold. "Your mother would be so proud of you, Chloe," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Not just for saving the house, but for how you did it. You were smart, you were prepared, and you never lost your kindness." That moment crystallized the most important lesson of this entire ordeal. Love is not a passive emotion. It requires vigilance. It means paying attention, asking hard questions, and being willing to face ugly truths to protect the people you care about. If I had ignored my gut, if I had chosen to avoid conflict, we would have lost everything. I've learned about forgiveness too. I've forgiven Megan for her blindness. I'm trying to find a way to forgive Ethan, though I don't know if our relationship can ever be repaired. And for Brenda, I can only wish her peace from a great distance. Some bridges are meant to stay burned. The house is our sanctuary again, filled with more warmth and laughter than it has known in years. We've made a few practical changes, a chair lift for the stairs, better lighting in the halls, but its soul, the love baked into its very walls, remains. Last night, Dad and I were sitting on the porch swing, watching the snow fall. He turned to me, his eyes clear and content. "You know," he said, "your mother always used to say that houses have memories, that they absorb the lives lived within them. If she was right, this old house has one hell of a story to tell." I think he's right, and I am grateful every single day that we fought to give it a happy ending. Have you ever had to stand up to your own family to protect someone you love? What gave you the strength to do what was right, even when it was hard? Share your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need a reminder that fighting for the truth is always worth it. Thank you for listening. And remember, sometimes the most important family is the one you fight for.